Legal heat on Donald Trump. Special counsel Jack Smith firing on all cylinders, issuing a superseding indictment in the Mar-a-Lago classified documents case, adding a new co-defendant as well as new charges against the former president of the United States. This coming as he reportedly gears up to indict Trump in the January 6th probe as well. NBC News has new details today on this meeting we told you about yesterday. U.S. Marshals meeting with law enforcement outside of the D.C. courthouse. We can report today that they were discussing the potential for violence and protesters around the expected indictment of former President Trump. Rolling Stone reporting today that Jack Smith is questioning witnesses about claims Trump called his team's election lies, quote, crazy. NBC News has not confirmed that reporting, but it does come on the heels of recent New York Times reporting that Smith was asking witnesses if Trump knew that he lost the election, trying to decipher whether Trump was acting with, quote, corrupt intent. The grand jury is scheduled to meet next on Tuesday in the January 6th probe. And now we also have a new court date down here in Florida. New classified documents case co-defendant Carlos de Oliveira, reportedly the Mar-a-Lago property manager, is scheduled to make his first appearance in court for his arraignment on Monday. The superseding indictment alleges de Oliveira helped Trump and Walt Nauta move those many, many boxes of classified documents, and that he conspired with Trump and Nauta to delete Mar-a-Lago surveillance footage. The indictment alleges, quote, at the Mar-a-Lago club, Nauta and de Oliveira went to the security guard booth where surveillance video is displayed on monitors, walked with a flashlight through the tunnel where the storage room was located, and observed and pointed out surveillance cameras. Then de Oliveira told another Trump employee that, quote, their conversation should remain between the two of them. And de Oliveira asked that employee, quote, how many days the server retained footage. The employer responded that he believed it was approximately 45 days, to which de Oliveira insisted that the boss wanted the server deleted and asked, what are we going to do? Joining me now is Maya Wiley, former SDNY civil prosecutor, and Dave Ehrenberg, state attorney for Palm Beach County, Florida. Thanks to both of you for getting the show started. Maya, you've now had the chance to review this superseding indictment. We were kind of going through it in real time last night together. I wanted to get your new thoughts now on the extent of Donald Trump's attempts to obstruct justice through not only deleting or attempting to delete the surveillance footage at Mar-a-Lago, but also, I think, buying cooperation from Nauta and de Oliveira through things like paying for their attorneys.
And apparently, possibly a fourth defendant, Mr. Taveras, who is one, if that reporting is accurate, who is one of the people Mr. de Oliveira was talking to about surveillance. So I think this is, I don't know that there's a lot new to say. The reality is we're just seeing the mounting and specific nature of the evidence of Donald Trump's direct engagement with trying to ensure not only that he could hold on to reams of documents he wasn't supposed to, not only hold on to national security information that endangered the national security of the country, but his direct involvement in trying to ensure that the federal government didn't get them back. And I think the thing that is so damning about this, what is suggested in the indictment, is the length to which Donald Trump went. If they can prove, and it looks like they have the evidence from this indictment, that he had the state of mind, that he was sending directions and directly involved and engaged in conversations, including getting rid of the potential evidence that was going to demonstrate that he was lying publicly and to investigators when he was saying he had turned over all the documents.
Dave, is this the quintessential example of when the cover-up is worse than the crime?
Yes, Katie, obstruction is really damaging for the president because not only is it a standalone crime, punishable by up to 20 years in prison, but it shows consciousness of guilt for the other crimes, the violations of the Espionage Act. I mean, why would you want to destroy the video? Because you knew what you were doing was wrong. So this helps juries believe that the defendant is guilty. Obstruction is a double whammy. It's its own crime and will help convict the former president and perhaps Nauta and de Oliveira of other crimes. So he's got a lot to be worried about right now.
Maya, considering the chronology of events that have been set forth in the superseding indictment, the level of detail, some of which we believe that special counsel Jack Smith actually knew about when he filed that original indictment, do you think that we're at this stage because De Oliveira was charged because he refused to cooperate with the DOJ?
Well, I think that's a real possibility. It certainly would be a plausible explanation about why we have this superseding indictment. You know, to your point, we know that Mr. De Oliveira spoke with investigators on a voluntary basis back in January. And this is obviously, there's been a lot of evidence amassed and amassing, but his role and the fact that there are documents, apparently in the form of text messages and other evidence, discussions with many witnesses, suggests that there was probably a strong indication for them that Mr. De Oliveira and, again, potentially Mr. Taveras were deeply engaged in trying to hide these documents. So it's one of the explanations for certainly why we're just getting the superseding indictment now. And it's also not a surprise, then, that we're seeing this very explicit nature of this statement about Donald Trump paying the legal fees for people who otherwise might have a lot more incentive to flip if they were hanging out there by themselves, and it's a way of his PAC to provide some incentive for them not to do that. I would argue that that's perhaps not in their best personal interests, given the evidence that suggests that we're going to see. But nonetheless, that seems to also be something that leans in favor of trying to put more pressure on them to do what might be in their best legal interests.
Buying people's silence is definitively, I think, a Trump MO and one we've seen before. Dave, so now we have a superseding indictment filed. What can we expect during De Oliveira's arraignment on Monday?
He'll plead not guilty, and he'll have a lawyer paid for by Donald Trump. And then the pressure will begin on both De Oliveira and Nada to flip. Now, Nada thought he had a good situation. He was the only co-defendant, and he was going to stay loyal to the former president. But now with the indictment of De Oliveira, now it puts pressure on Nada to flip, because now Jack Smith has a potential new dance partner, and the first one to accept Jack Smith's proposal is going to get the biggest ring, and the other one gets a lump of coal. So you got to get accept the offer when it comes to you. And now you've got these two guys who may be playing off each other. And De Oliveira and Nada have important information. But in the end, I don't think Jack Smith needs them as much as they need Jack Smith, because Jack Smith has something better. He has the notes of Trump's lawyer, Evan Corcoran. I mean, he got that because of the exception of the attorney-client privilege that they were used in the commission of a crime. So the feds have Trump's lawyers' intricate notes. And I think with all the evidence that Jack Smith has, this is heading towards an ultimate conviction.
Yeah, but Dave, the biggest concern a lot of us have is how slowly the wheels of justice can turn. We have a May 2024 trial date. Reporting is that De Oliveira's lawyer is not even barred in the state of Florida, let alone in the Southern District of Florida. Do you think we might see a repeat of what we had with Walt Nauta, this repeated attempt to be able to get local counsel in order to even just get De Oliveira arraigned in the first place?
Katie, this is the risk that Jack Smith took when he indicted another defendant in this case. He knew that in adding a third defendant, it would slow things down, because when Nada slowed things down, that hurt Jack Smith's attempt to get this thing tried in December and now in May. But now you've got another defendant, and he's going to help Trump by trying to say, I can't find a lawyer, I need more delays, and that will definitely help the boss, as they call him. But I think Jack Smith is more concerned when it comes to the documents case in getting it done right than getting it done before the election, because I think you're going to see an imminent indictment over January 6th, attempts to overturn the 2020 election. And I think that case will be heard before the documents case. That'll be up in Washington, D.C. They're going to get a judge that's used to this kind of stuff. There's not going to be a CIPA, classified documents delay going on. And I think that case will be tried first. I think this case, Katie, as I've said before, is likely to be tried after the election.
Maya, let's put some dollar signs on what we were talking about a few minutes ago in terms of Trump footing the bill, or more accurately, not Donald Trump, his PAC footing the bill for multiple lawyers representing multiple defendants now. NBC News reporting Trump's Save America PAC paid nearly $190,000 to De Oliveira's attorney's law firm last year. What are your thoughts? I mean, I will add this caveat. The lawyer, John Irving, he actually represents other people that are in the Trump world. So it may not necessarily just for De Oliveira.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I think this is really, it's such a big number. It's certainly not surprising to many of us who know how much it costs to have legal representation, and also why it's such a big incentive for people to take the help. And potentially how that gets used to silence them. And look, we got to remember Michael Cohen. Remember, he was also offered Trump counsel. He ended up turning his back on it. You know, we saw him and we saw what's happened as a result of that. You know, in this case, it's a little different because Michael Cohen didn't cooperate either. He just kind of went out on his own, did not actually seem to ask for a plea deal. But the reason I just make this point, you made the point earlier, Katie, that this is Donald Trump's M.O. And I think the interesting thing here is going to be see how much, because a lot of folks, particularly other candidates in this election, are going to be able to use this fact in their own ads. They're going to be able to talk about what's happening in the world in the sphere of Trump, particularly use it against them. So, you know, it's going to be very interesting to watch how this all plays out in the election cycle, whether or not the case is actually tried before the election.